Scientific discoveries, new technologies, and inventive applications of cutting-edge knowledge have become increasingly essential for success in a competitive global economy and in addressing challenges and opportunities in diverse societal areas such as health, environment, and national security. As such, the strength of a country's overall R&D enterprise, including both public and private sectors of this system, is an important marker of current and future national economic advantage and of prospects of societal improvements. Much of the transformative impact of R&D originates from the academia of a nation, inspired by its government and fueled by its industry. The Tertiary Education Trust Fund has intervened by standing in the gap and providing much-needed infrastructure to Nigeria's public universities, polytechnics, and colleges of education. The result of this has been overwhelmingly positive. But TETFund, determined not to rest on its laurels, has taken a step further with an ambition to make Nigeria's tertiary education institutions the nucleus of the nation's industrial revolution. Professor Suleiman Elias Bogoro, the Executive Secretary of TETFund, firmly believes that the institutionalization of research and development, in addition to infrastructure intervention, will yield the result needed to make Nigeria a globally competitive economy in an age of information and knowledge.
The idea of focusing on R&D as a priority area for the academia that our law permits us to fund from TETFund started in 2014. And I wrote, the Board of Trustees asked me to articulate my vision for 5 years as Executive Secretary of TETFund. And I wrote a 6-pointer. And one of the 6 pillars of my vision was the institutionalization of R&D in Nigeria beyond the academic.
The TETFund strategic approach is comprised of 3 essential tools. The Department of R&D Centers of Excellence, domiciled within the agency, which coordinates all research and development interventions. The TETFund Centers of Excellence in all 6 geopolitical zones of the country, 12 of which have since commenced operations, with more to come. And the TETFund Standing Committee on Research and Development, which has since submitted comprehensive reports that will lead to the birth of the National Research and Development Foundation. But why has TETFund expended such energy on this endeavor when Nigeria is said to be rich in natural resources and arable land? Are oil and subsistence, raw materials, agro-products not enough to sustain and grow Nigeria's economy? The answer to that question is no.
Recently passed petroleum industry bill that is being harmonized by both chambers of the National Assembly. And you can see the great deal of outrage from certain parts of the country. It's because a great deal of our thinking and our faculty it's frankly diminished because of the focus on oil that is destructive and that gets exhausted at some point. And in any event, even if our oil were inexhaustible, where is the place of renewables? Because over the course of time, renewables will ultimately take the place of oil. And so part of what needs to be done, even in the context of renewables, it's driven by research.
Natural resources and arable land are blessings to have, but in and of themselves cannot transform an economy without the value added from innovation, which drives productivity. In this edition of The Paradigm Shift, we take a study of selected countries who operate the most significant and dominant economies in the world. We study how investment in research for development has been their secret weapon.
But what a foundation will do is taking the research outputs of these centers of excellence to the next level. And that next level is trying to ensure that the output is translated into either an industrial product, into a policy to change the direction of the economy, all right? And once it is changed into a product, that means you need the industry. And that industry now takes up that product and it becomes a product that can be marketed.
In the United States, the nation's overall R&D enterprise relies on the R&D performance and funding of diverse set of actors, including businesses, the federal government, non-federal governments, higher education institutions, and other non-profit organizations.
The United States. If you're speaking in terms of oil, what's the first thing that comes to your mind in terms of the United States? Is Texas. But if you look at the American economy, the economy of California, Silicon Valley, is much more profound and exponential compared to what Texas with its oil has to offer.
R&D performed in the United States totaling $547 billion in 2017 alone, reflecting yearly increases averaging $20 billion over the 2010-2017 period. The main driver of this sustained and sizable increase was business R&D performance. The global total of R&D expenditures has risen at a substantial pace since the turn of the century to $2.1 trillion in 2017, a threefold increase from the $722 billion of the year 2000. This expansion reflects the escalating knowledge intensity of economic competition among the world's leading economies, as well as an important role of R&D in addressing global challenges such as health, environment, and security. The United States and China each account for about a quarter of the global R&D total. The remaining top R&D performing nations together account for somewhat more than a third of the global total. In decreasing order, Japan, Germany, South Korea, France, India, United Kingdom, Russia, Brazil, Taiwan, Italy, Canada, Spain, Turkey, and Australia. China's R&D growth rate continues to greatly exceed that of the United States and contributes to the sustained rise in R&D performance in South Asia and East-Southeast Asia, including China, Japan, South Korea, India, and Taiwan. The combined R&D performance across these regions of Asia rose from 25% to 42% of the global total between the years 2000 and 2017. With these regions continuing to record substantial, faster than average R&D growth rates, this remaking of the global geography of R&D is unlikely to slow down soon.
All the countries that have actually achieved industrialization, have achieved knowledge economy, and are really moving forward, did it through research and development. Because you have to drive industrialization, you need research. And to drive the economy, you need industrialization. Beyond just improving our economy. Every aspect of national economy can be driven by research and development.
The countries mentioned so far are top economies, which may not share a lot in common in countries like Nigeria. So let's have a look at countries that were roughly within the same bracket or even behind Nigeria at the time of independence in 1960 and analyze how R&D investment have propelled them.
And the reason why maybe Singapore is one that one can really learn from is because they started like us. They were basically like us. You're talking about Singapore, Malaysia. They were just at our own level. They were more like where we are some years back, and then all of a sudden they have gone up. So we can really learn from them.
Malaysia is a country in Southeast Asia and a member of the Commonwealth. It represents the political marriage of territories that were formerly under British rule. Nigeria and Malaysia share certain features in common. Both are plural societies. Both experienced colonialism, and both are federal and democratic states. The country is multi-ethnic and multicultural, which has a significant effect on its politics. About half of the population is ethnically Malay, with minorities of Chinese, Indians, and indigenous people. Polarization over race, religion, and reform has afflicted Malaysia for decades and powerfully shaped its electoral politics. Since the country's independence in 1957, its ethnic Malay majority has enjoyed a constitutionally protected special status, while ethnic minorities have been treated as second-class citizens. But what makes Malaysia's polarization so complex is that two additional cleavages over religion and competing visions for political reform overlap with and often intensify ethnic divides. Political elites regularly appeal to these divides to mobilize their supporters, but also make intermittent efforts to downplay one or more of these fractures with the aim of winning the center ground and securing power. Malaysia is proof that having a single dominant religion is not a guarantee for social harmony. Though largely Muslim, the country's independence period saw an emergence of a second divide, this one between Islamists and secularists. Debates over the appropriate role of Islam in public life intensifies among Malay elites starting in the 1930s and shaped different conceptions of nationalism. After independence, the Malaysian GDP grew at an average of 6.5% per annum for almost 50 years. The economy has traditionally been fueled by its natural resources, but is expanding in the science, tourism, commerce, and medical tourism sectors. Malaysia has a newly industrialized market economy, ranked 3rd in Southeast Asia and 33rd largest in the world. Once heavily dependent on primary products such as rubber and tin, Malaysia today is an upper-middle income country with a multi-sector economy based on services and manufacturing. Malaysia is one of the world's largest exporters of semiconductor components and devices, electrical goods, solar panels, and information and communication technology products. In the 1970s, Malaysia began to imitate the four Asian tiger economies, South Korea, Taiwan, and then British Crown colony of Hong Kong and Singapore. It committed itself to a transition from being reliant on mining and agriculture to an economy that depends on manufacturing. In the 1970s, the predominantly mining and agricultural-based Malaysian economy began a transition towards a more multi-sector economy. But since the 1980s, the industrial sector has led Malaysia's growth. High levels of investment played a significant role in this. With Japanese investment, heavy industries flourished, and in a matter of years, Malaysian exports became the country's primary growth engine. Malaysia consistently achieved more than 7% GDP growth, along with low inflation in the 1980s through the 1990s. The economy of Malaysia has shifted from relying on agricultural system and exports of raw materials to a diversified economy that includes the export of high-precision electronics. This is due to the adoption of research and development in Malaysia, which played a major role in pushing forward a knowledge-based economy. The Republic of Singapore is a sovereign island city-state in maritime Southeast Asia. It lies about 1 degree of latitude, that is 137 kilometers or 85 miles north of the equator.
Singapore is a small country, and we all know that, Singapore was not where it was some few years back, and then you can see how it has moved forward.
Singapore gained self-governance in 1959 and in 1963 became part of the new Federation of Malaysia. Ideological differences led to Singapore being expelled from the Federation 2 years later, becoming an independent country. Religion in Singapore is characterized by a wide variety of religious beliefs and practices due to its diverse ethnic mix of peoples originating from various cultures. This means that Singapore is commonly termed a melting pot of various religious practices originating from different religious denominations around the world. The most followed religion in Singapore is Buddhism, with 31.1% of the resident population declaring themselves adherents. A large majority of Buddhists in Singapore are Chinese. However, there are also sizable numbers of non-Chinese ethnic groups in Singapore that practice Buddhism, such as the Sinhalese, the Burmese, and the Thais. People with no religion form the second largest group and constitute 20% of the population. Up to a quarter, that is 24% of people aged between 15 to 24, are irreligious. Islam is practiced by 15% of the population, who are mostly Malays, and Hinduism is followed mainly by the Indians. 18.9% of Singaporeans identified as Christians. After early years of turbulence and despite lacking natural resources and a hinterland, the nation rapidly developed to become one of the 4 Asian tigers based on external trade, becoming a highly developed country. It is ranked 9th on the UN Human Development Index and has the second highest GDP per capita in the world. In the 1960s, the city-state of Singapore was underdeveloped, with a GDP per capita of less than $320. Today, it is one of the world's fastest-growing economies. Its GDP per capita has risen to an incredible $60,000, making it one of the strongest economies in the world. For a small country with few natural resources, Singapore's economic ascension is nothing short of remarkable. By embracing globalization, free market capitalism, education, and pragmatic policies, the country has been able to overcome its geographic disadvantages and become a leader in global commerce. Singapore is a major exporter, particularly of electronics, chemicals, and services, as well as the regional hub for wealth management. Singapore has limited arable land, meaning that Singapore has to rely on agro-technology parks for agricultural production. Agro-technology is the use of technology in agriculture, horticulture, and aquaculture with the aim of improving yield, efficiency, and profitability. Agricultural technology can be products, service, and applications derived from agriculture to improve various input and output processes. Human resources is another vital issue for the health of the Singaporean economy. After Lee Kuan Yew was elected Prime Minister in 1959, he oversaw a significant economic reform to the country. Structural change and machinery propelled the economy during his tenure. Singapore was a small and densely populated nation with very few natural resources and little space to grow outwards. Recognizing this, Lee identified that the key advantage that Singapore held was its human capital and its ability to provide highly educated citizens capable of competing in the global industry and trade. In 1961, the Singapore government established the Economic Development Board to spearhead an investment drive and make Singapore an attractive destination for foreign investment. In the 1980s, Singapore began to shift towards high-tech industries, such as wafer fabrication sector, in order to remain competitive as neighboring countries began manufacturing with cheaper labor. Singapore has achieved remarkable economic growth over the last 40 years, with GDP growth averaging 8% between 1965 and 2002. It is only in the last 15 years that Singapore began to invest significantly in R&D. Singapore's R&D expenditure was negligible in the early 1980s, accounting for less than 0.5% of GDP. But it has since risen rapidly to reach 2.1% of GDP by the year 2001. This is only slightly lower than the GERD to GDP ratios in advanced nations such as USA and Japan, and compares favorably to the ratios in South Korea and Taiwan. The number of research scientists and engineers also rose in tandem with R&D spending, increasing from 8.5 RSEs per 10,000 labor force in 1978 to 87.6 by 2001. TETFund, under the leadership of Professor Bogoro, is convinced beyond doubt that if Singapore and Malaysia can break into the exclusive club of developed countries, Nigeria can too. What is needed is the requisite passion and investment from a convergence of the academia, industry, and the government, who form the Triple Helix Partnership. The efforts are already yielding fruits on the international scene.
Yes, many Nigerians might not have been privileged to see the reports, But the reports that we have as of today look at nothing less than 13 activity sectors of the economy. That 13 activity sectors of the economy are contributor to our GDP to the tune of over 85%. So assuming we are able to use R&D tools to kickstart those economies, those sectors of the economy, and everybody is working at full frequency. Let me put it that way. And we are having R&D outcomes, outputs, products are coming up. We are doing product development. A lot of people are patenting their idea. We are involving those people that are from the informal sector of the economy, inventors that they have never gone to school. That made us to realize that by the time we actually assist these people with outcomes of R&D, in getting them more organized, in leveraging technology that can assist the little they are doing now, we want to believe that the economy of Nigeria is going to feel it across the nation.
And so what I believe this will do in terms of being a game changer in a very profound, transformative way is that if you drive development through research, which we hope the NRDF will accomplish, I believe that Nigeria will be very competitive and you will have a diversity of sources of income as a country, and we will not be entangled in the politics that often bedevils oil. We're talking about, for instance, the recently passed petroleum industry bill that is being harmonized by both chambers of the National Assembly. And you can see the great deal of outrage from certain parts of the country.
The Science Granting Council's initiative in sub-Saharan Africa has announced that TETFund has joined the initiative to advance research excellence in sub-Saharan Africa. Since 2015, SGCI has been jointly funded by the United Kingdom's Foreign Commonwealth Development Office, Canada's International Development Research Centre, South Africa's National Research Foundation, the Swedish International Development Cooperation Agency, and the German Research Foundation. The Executive Secretary of TETFund says the SGCI will open a new window of opportunity that will serve as a fulcrum in achieving our goal: Nigeria's transition to a knowledge economy in the 21st century. And that is the paradigm shift.